Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. We are continuing the theme finding refuge in recovery. A safe place may be some word that we overuse, but it can be vital in our healing. Now, finding a safe place and defining in our own context is very much individualized. Today, we have a new guest. I hope the connection today's been a little trying, but I hope we could continue to maintain this. We have Dawn. Could you just hold on? Let me just add you. Dawn, could you share how I would pronounce your first name, if that's okay?
Yeah, it's DawnSherine.
DawnSherine. Thank you for joining us.
Yep.
We will push through. I heard earlier today that YouTube was having issues on their loading of like changing accounts today. So we will muscle through. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your insight, DawnSherine.
Yep. Thank
Well,
you.
I always begin with a disclaimer for those in the U.S. 1-800-273-8255 is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. I encourage all those listening around the world to find what is available, whatever resource that may be. I start off with a quote. A lot of times people say better than I do. Alice Walker says it this way: the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. What comes to mind when you hear this quote?
It means that people give up and they give up their own thought processes, and they don't believe in themselves, that they have their own power within themselves in order to muscle through things, and that they depend on other people, other resources, and ideas that aren't their own in order to fulfill their own life.
It's interesting. You say other people's ideas. A lot of times we could explain ourselves. We could convince ourselves not to do much of anything, or convince ourselves to do something that may be very toxic. But
Right.
one of the things is that sometimes we give up the right to think for ourselves. It's okay to have, you go through the journey of discovery. You learn about things, you grow, but that doesn't happen in a vacuum. It comes from insight. It comes from reflection. It comes from being wrong sometimes and having these conversations that we are having right now. So I appreciate you being on. I want to ask you a little bit about yourself, DawnSherine. You started, you started this. I'll have you kind of explain this. You started dancing with bipolar.com, if that's correct. Can you share a little bit more about why you created this program, why you think it's important today?
I started the podcast almost 3 years ago. The anniversary is coming up on the 17th of this month, so it's like exciting. And I started it. Yeah, it is. It's so exciting. And I started it because, first of all, I wanted to help people. But secondly, because I looked for a podcast that I could relate to about bipolar. And there wasn't really anything that was exactly what I was looking for. And I figured that there was other people that were maybe looking for the same kind of show that I do. And it's hard to explain my show. It's kind of like informative, yet it's my life. So it's a journal. And then I do interviews as well. So it's kind of like the all-inclusive bipolar podcast, where it's like you can get the jokes, but you can get information, and you can, my story, is real and raw. I never edit. So it's like you get what you get when I do it at the time. And ultimately, the real reason I started it was because a friend said she was going to have me on her podcast and kept blowing me off. And I was like, you know what? I could do my own podcast and get it out there. And then she had me on like 3 months after, and I was like, beat you to the punch, and I still did her show. But it was like, I really felt like I had a story, or I had something to give people that would help them feel like they're not alone. They're not the only ones in the fight, that they have camaraderie. I call it my posse, the Dancing with Bipolar posse. And so that's what it is, and I just felt like it needed to happen.
Yeah, I love, very similar. Everyone comes from their, different approaches. But my whole thing was, just continue the dialogue. Like, I like some of the informative things that I do bring to my podcast, but the idea is continue the dialogue. Sometimes a lot of these topics sometimes don't are things that we don't normally are talked about. So I do appreciate, 3 years. That's wonderful. There must be, I was scared when I first started, just, not knowing. You could talk yourself out of everything. Like, you could be like, that I don't have the equipment. I don't have any of this. Doesn't matter. You just have to just be intentional, grow, learn from whatever you liked you did, whatever you didn't. But the whole point is continuing.
Yeah, and I've known people that have spent like groups of money on equipment and they don't last, say, 10 shows. And I've done it continually on my phone, which is like, it's kind of, it's like on the go, on the go podcast.
Yeah, and I feel, that's the consistency is something to be admired, to be praised. Because the thing is, just defining what you're actually doing. You're connecting with people around the world, and whether you have whether you have the equipment or not, it's the discussion. And I feel that it's inspiring when we could talk ourselves, only if I had this equipment can I do it. No, you just need one other person to talk to, or even yourself. I've done solo podcasts because I couldn't find a guest. So I
talk to myself all the time. For my New Year's show, my guest bagged on me, so I interviewed myself. So it's like it's kind of funny, but it's like one of the best interviews I've done. So
yeah, you kind of roll with the punches, and I really, it's kind of kindred spirits, because a lot of times I don't know if the guest will show up or there's technical issues or whatnot, but it doesn't stop me. So I really appreciate you coming on. Going back to the title, the theme this month. When you think of refuge, a lot of times, we kind of may tend to think physically, but the quote suggests that there's some sort of mindset that may be dictating how we may see our ability. We kind of talk about that with the podcast, but we're talking about recovery and healing. What's your take on what has your experience been when you think about the idea of a safe place? Refuge we don't use a lot because it has a lot of connotations, but safe place, what does that mean to you, and is it important?
Yeah, a safe place is very important, especially in recovery, because recovery itself is like an unknown territory, right? Because you're recovering from drugs, alcohol. It could be anger issues. It could be some kind of an abuse issue, and the fact that you're trying to aid yourself in getting better in these situations. I mean, safety is paramount in doing that. And to me, like, I hadn't had a safe place in a really, really long time. The place I was living at was dangerous, and my mental health was really off the chain. I wasn't stable. I wasn't really compliant on my medications. And then I came into this place, which is basically a safe house, and I started their discipleship program. And then the next thing you knew, I was like, I felt safe here. I have God here. I have sisters and I have, I have the ability to delve into the recoveries that I need to make, knowing that I have a safety net here that is not going to fail me, and it's key, and like in any kind of recovery, like even in your bipolar recovery or any kind of mental health diagnosis recovery, safety, a good support system, people that you can trust and know are not going to fail you. You have to have that. Otherwise, your recovery is going to be flat. Because if you fail, there's going to be no one there to catch your fall, and you're going to go further down than you even started at during your recovery. So yeah, I think safety in any aspect of your life, though. I mean, even if you're not in recovery, and I don't know who doesn't need to recover from something in their life, even just be COVID, it's like, if you don't have at least one person that's going to be like edging you on and telling you that you're doing a great job and that you can rely on them, then your recovery is going to be fleeting, I think, because the chances of falling back when you realize that you have no one there to enjoy it with you
Mhm.
experience your recovery with you, I think it's just looking for failure.
There's a saying, life is left best lived shared. And I think one thing that's inevitable is change. It is going to happen, So I do find, if I having a positive environment, whatever that may be, maybe a group of friends,
Yeah.
things, you say you're a part of, church, faith-based. This is an outreach podcast. I was wondering how to toe the line because I'm a faith-based
Hmm.
leader, but how I toe the line, I don't. The whole idea is it's outreach. So the idea is that's like a medical missionary. The idea is I try to provide a safe place for people to discuss certain things of certain
Hmm.
topics that people don't like to normally talk about, inspiring hope. So that's kind of what I model everything around. But I remember the first time I was in church. I'll tell you this real funny story. When I started, really, sometimes you just stay in your lane. I
Yeah.
did the sound because I was pretty good at it. I used to do it before. I didn't listen to nothing that was going up on at church, but I made sure that they were sounding well. That's how it started. I stayed in my lane. Sometimes you don't see the full staircase at all, but
Right.
sometimes
Right.
you just have to take the first step. That's I'm paraphrasing what Martin Luther King said previously, but I want to ask you, what has been your experience that has worked with you when it comes to safe place? I'm not going to use refuge but in regards to safe place that has been positive or negatively, that has worked. Like, what has worked for you to maintain it in your experience, and what
Ooh.
hasn't worked?
Well, faith faith is huge in maintaining it. Because
Mm,
if you don't believe that you're gonna stay safe, then your
mm,
head is gonna go a little bit crazy on you, right? Because you're like, what am I doing all this stuff for? If ultimately I'm still gonna wind up in the same danger that I started out in before I
mm,
did this. And negatively, before I came here, I delusionally convinced myself that I was in a safe place, and
mm.
it was not safe. But I
Yeah.
stayed there because it was comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought it was comfortable. Let's just leave it at that. I didn't want to change. I did want to change, but I didn't want to change the comfort that I had, what I knew, the
Yeah.
reliability of the chaos that I was living in.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense itself, the chaos was a safety net for me because I knew what to expect in
Yeah.
that it was always going to be off the chain crazy. Now when
Mm-hmm.
I came into this very safe place, I mean it's a very, very safe place. There's the only danger I have is if I go out and get hit by a bus, like
Mm-hmm.
literally. But it was so stable to me that I didn't understand it when I first came in here. So it was actually terrifying to me, and I didn't feel safe because it was so unusual for me to have this stability and have this love and have this family, this good
Mm-hmm.
family, atmosphere that I have, that I almost balked at it. I was ready to leave the first couple of weeks, and then I suddenly washed over me, and it's like, this is the house of God.
Mm-hmm.
This is the house of Christ, and it's like you could not be in a safer place to get over what has just happened to you and to build the next foundations of your life than right here. And I mean and then the discipleship program is like that's like that times 10,000. So
Yeah.
it's like, I'm fully immersed in it, and I'm fully safe. I'm absolutely fully safe. There's nothing that can come to harm me here as long as I have faith and belief.
Mm-hmm. It's wonderfully inspiring when you when you kind of immerse yourself in a safe place, because what I have found is that that's where some of the biggest steps of healing happens. When you're able to kind of reflect and say, hey, like you mentioned, you were comfortable. Like, there's this one word, my wife has this untranslatable words. It's in Welsh. It's harath. It's a homesickness for somewhere you cannot return to. The nostalgia and grief for the lost place of your past, places that never were. We sometimes look at things. It's kind of eerie how this is defined. It's kind of, we look at things a little bit more positively or negatively depending on this, the context of what we're going through. But sometimes the danger is the complacency. We might want to stay there because we feel that is this is the best it could be. But you took that leap of faith to go to the place you are today, and because of that, you're growing towards something. Remember the idea in the beginning, the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. Sometimes we kind of get stunted by the idea that, well, this is how it is and this is how it's always gonna be. It doesn't have to be. The idea is that there's change that can be changed, and that's the idea. But sometimes with change, like you said, every day is not a crisis situation, but every day also you may not see the steps you're taking forward. You know what I mean? Sometimes you're like, okay, I'm trying. This is a safe place, but you may be like stuck. You might be so stagnant. But I would even encourage people not just to focus on the destination. There's this verb, vacilando in Spanish, is traveling when the experience itself is more important than the destination. The idea that you're immersing yourself through this healing process. I like it when during COVID, me and my wife were in the house. I'm like, let's just go for a drive. I'm like, where? She's like, where? I'm like, I don't care. Let's just drive, because we throw the GPS away. We just drive a little bit. I just need to get out of my head. So, so it's nice to kind of remember. Before, everyone's like, GPS is nice to get somewhere, but sometimes it promotes the idea that the idea is only to get somewhere, but the context is presently is important too, if that makes sense. So, I find that has been helpful. So there's this one word, and I wasn't gonna bring it up, but a lot of times when we're talking about the complacent, toxic kind of comfortability, I don't know how to say this in Dutch. Politik. It's ostrich politics. It's acting like you don't notice when something bad happens and continue on regardless as you normally would. Man, I think anyone and everyone could understand this one. We've done it in various ways. I know I have, but sometimes in context of what we're talking about, it can be very toxic because we may not see that there is a opportunity for change. I want to ask yourself, and we kind of been speaking on this, but what is the danger you feel personally if we continue to get complacent in our approach, as the word suggests, in our mindset? Like, what have you
in life in general? Oh my gosh, I mean, that's just like, you might as well just be stuck in quicksand for the rest of your life and not look to change or grow or do anything. I mean, that's kind of like what my teacher talks about, denial, like don't even know I am lying. And it's like, right? And that's kind of the same thing. It's like you just stay stuck, but you don't realize that you're lying to yourself. And that's again where we go back to the no control thing, where you're like, oh, I have no control to change this, and I can't affect any positive change or any change, period, in anything in my life. So I might as well just keep on doing the same routine, same mindset, same everything. And in my opinion, you might as well just lay down and just do, you know what I mean? It's like, if you're not going to try to better things, better yourself, just grow, stay up with the times. I mean, I know so many people who are like, well, this is in here too, and I'm not going to diss the program. This is the way it's always been. This is how we've always done it. This is what it is. And it's like, but this is like 20 years later from when you were doing it. Times have changed. We can still stay with the concept, but we can make it a little more modern, a little better, a little more in the time, so other people might want to join the program and do this thing, and I'm a mover and a shaker. I mean, I like to make things happen, and that's an old term, right, too. I like to make things happen, and I like to affect positive change. So laying there and just watching things just roll over me, no, that's not gonna happen.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of times, being church leader, some people will say, my best time in church was 20 years ago. That's a problem for me. Like, for me, it's like, it can't be the best time, whatever it is 20 years ago. What about now? And I'm not saying that you may have certain preferences. It's different. It kind of relates to what you're saying. The idea is sometimes we're like, we get so stuck on the idea that this is how it's been and this is how it's always going to be. And unfortunately, that can be very, like we said, it could be dangerous, I believe, when we get stuck that way. Because even if we don't even realize it, we may have a nice house, we may have everything might be going, but the bitterness will happen. I've seen this too. Bitterness, because it just hasn't, the way we treat the people around us, it will affect our relationships and how we see the world. And just like what happened in COVID, things changed so drastically. So I would not venture. The one thing I always tell people, because I don't proselytize in this podcast, but I would say the one thing that draws me to faith was that one thing: God doesn't change. It's a one comforting thing. As a rational person as I was coming from the church on the other end, I would say that's the one constant, because change, whether it's good or bad, it's stressful. It is stressful. You get married, it's stressful. You get anything, it's stressful, because even good thing, you get promotion, that's stressful, because change is a lot of times what we sometimes struggle with adopting. Yasmin Mogahead said this way: resilience is very different than being numb. Resilience means you experience, you feel, you fail, you hurt, you fall, but you keep going. I didn't understand this concept of resilience until later on in my life, because I thought it was just being numb. No, numb. I misses the point, and I feel it also. This actually, from one, it can be painful to go through some of these steps, but
absolutely.
And one thing that I feel that's interesting about this idea is, at least for me, whenever I know it's going to be painful, like especially when you're going through some healing, and I know it's going to suck. In the military, they embrace the suck. Yeah. It's not that it doesn't make it sucky. It just, you prepare your mind. Like I never like getting surprised. I really, really don't. So like, if I know something's gonna be suck, but if it's important to me, if it's of value to me, and if it's something that because the fear is, at least for me, is that we live our life impulsively. Emotions are good things to reflect and kind of analyze what's going on, but they're not good to be led by.
True.
If I was led by emotions, I might be in jail right now. But like, it's just honest. Emotions are really impulsive. If everything was like, I need it here and now. I think one of the funniest songs we used to hear a lot of times is "Tonight's the Night." Tonight's the only night. No, it's not. It's not the only night. Sometimes it's just, those, and I feel that urgency may impact us, because sometimes recovery gets slow. You might get to a plateau. You might like, what's next? But you're making steps, even though you may not see them. So I'm trying to remind ourselves, especially as we move forward. The title, Finding Our Refuge in Recovery. I've been using safe place, because refuge, I think, is an older term. Sometimes it deals, we're dealing with the Ukraine. You see the Ukraine, what's happening there. You think about refugees. But in the idea, when I think of refuge, I think about a safe place, somewhere you could be when the storm comes. You can hunker down. You try to let the storm blow over. There's going to be storms in our lives. But what is this topic when it comes finding? Like, we're seeking for this environment that's safe, positive. What does this topic mean to you personally?
Okay, what was that again? Because you were breaking up a little bit.
Oh, sorry. When it comes to a refuge, like a place where you could maybe hunker down during like a storm, what does this topic mean to you? Finding our refuge in recovery, personally.
Okay, it means that's actually a really good question. So refuge and recovery, I guess it's kind of a double-edged sword, I guess. So the refuge and recovery could mean that you're finding a place to save yourself from your recovery, where you're trying to find a safe place to maybe like reflect on your recovery. Yeah. Go aside from your recovery. But it can also mean Oh, I think that's kind of what it means, but I mean, it can also mean like the refuge is your recovery, and that by having the recovery that you are, it's actually a refuge from what it is that you are recovering from. So
Yeah.
I think it can actually go both ways, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and like my recovery is in so many different ways, and I mean, there's so much stuff. Everybody goes into the podcast and you can get a better idea
Yeah.
of everything that I've just come through, right? I mean, honestly, it's been a trip. But I mean, in a way, it's like, it's kind of funny because my refuge right now is in Christ and in the discipleship program and everything I'm learning. And boy, it's a lot. I mean, this is like an MBA in Jesus is kind of what I feel like. It's like there's so much to it. But I find my refuge in this recovery too by going out in nature and experiencing God instead of just like being in the house all the time and just like enveloping myself in it, like with books and stuff like that, and going out into nature and finding my refuge from this recovery in the house and that refuge and recovery outside in nature, where I can actually experience, you know, the wonder of God and of Jesus and everything, and not have it be so like heavy, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
In the house. Okay.
Yeah, because I feel like, even in faith, sometimes it's good to learn scripture and get more acquainted and understand how, but it's also every day, you know, it can get a little heavy, especially depending on and I do appreciate you when it comes to what is a refuge for you, it may be different. And I think the idea I was trying to mention in the beginning is that, you know, when we think about finding a safe place and defining it in our own context is very much individualized, and it changes. It's not just one linear, and that's the one thing that's really unique about it. I want to ask you, as we kind of wrap things up, what would you say to someone struggling today, listen to this podcast, maybe saying, you know, I don't have a safe place, or just saying like what we're talking about, this harass, like they're kind of like stuck in this, you know, I'm comfortable, this is how it is, it's always going to be, this is not going to be any better. Not like we could guarantee, obviously, but what would you want to say encouraging to those listening?
Well, first of all, never give up. You know, it's an option. It's a bad option. There's always help for people. But I mean, honestly, if you just rely on for some people that's not good, but if you just take one step forward a day towards positive action. Now, for people like with a really bad mental health diagnosis, that can just be getting out of bed, taking a shower. That's one positive step that you can take. You know, and I mean, that is honestly my best advice for everybody. Stay positive even in the bad times, because the thing is, once you get over that bad time, it is so beautiful on the other side that you don't want to miss it. You really don't. You want to barrel that stuff. Ask for help. I tell the people on my podcast all the time, hit me up on my email and stuff. If you need to talk to somebody, I will always respond to the emails. I will always get back to you. I will always at least let you know that you are a valid, viable person in this crazy world, and that you actually matter to me. So, you know, that's what I say to people.
You know, I really love how you simplified it. A lot of times people think recovery, these big acts, sometimes it's just getting out of bed. I say to some people I work with, you know, it can be overwhelming what you're going through. Just try to be better today, whatever that is. It means it may be not like, it may be I'm going to take a shower today, and that's going to be better than yesterday.
Exactly. So put on clean pajamas if you can't. Eat a piece of toast. You know, take one step outside your door. Open the shades. You know, I mean, it's simple that leads from one step to the next step to the next step. I call it baby stepping through life. And even as I'm not as progressed as I've become in my diagnosis, I still have to baby step through my days sometimes when it's just like so overwhelming to me that I'm like, I can't even do that much. And it's like, yes, you can. You just have to get out of bed. You got to get on a pair of shoes. You just got to do that. And it's like, and once you start that progression, it's easy. It's not easy, but it follows. Everything follows the next step. So you have to take the first step in order to get to the second step. It's
Yeah.
very basic, but it's not always easy. I'm not going to downplay it for people.
Yeah, one thing, the hope I feel is that we are not the majority that feel that we don't have the power to think for ourselves. I hope even these little baby steps, even if you're just, the best thing you do is get up, take a shower, and not be the common way people give up their power. Just say, you know what, I'm gonna do something today. As it being small doesn't really matter, because who are you comparing to? You're just doing what you can do today. Be better today, wherever that looks like. I want to say thank you. Thank you for being on. It's been a wonderful experience. I want to share all her information will be in the notes of the pod of today's. When this airs, which will be end of this month in April. But thank you so much, Dawn. I want to just share with those who are. I want to share with those who are listening. You can always stay updated with Revive Ministries through various platforms, ReviveMinistriesFL.com. I'll leave you this one last quote. I think I cannot put it all together, but it's there. Every worthy act is difficult. Ascent is always difficult. Descent is easy and often slippery. Mahatma Gandhi.